Good morning. In today's class, I will show you how to fill out a ISTE, a travel form for the state of New Mexico, following the Department of Finance and Administration's rules and guidelines and using the standardized form. So the first thing you need to do is obtain a copy of the required travel form. And that's a form that is published on the DFA website, and all agencies have to use it. If you are a state of New Mexico employee, public officer, you use the same standardized form. So first, let's go to the DFA website. And the domain name is nmdfa.state.nm.us. When you get to the website, browse to the financial controls section of the website, to the drop-down box, resource information, year-end closing. Click on the year-end closing. It will take you to the year-end closing page, which for now is still the 22 version. We will have the 23 version posted, near the end of 23 and 24 and so forth. The travel form, the ISTE, the itemized schedule of travel expenditures, is an attachment. If you scroll down, it's attachment W. And there are two versions. There is an Excel version and an Adobe PDF version. The Adobe PDF is a fillable PDF. I will show you how to use the Adobe PDF version today and make some comments as it relates to the Excel version as we go through filling out the form, because there are a few differences between the two. So go ahead and download that file by clicking Open File. And it depends on the browser you're using. Some browsers will open it automatically. Some will download it and you have to save it to your computer, whatever you might do. Whatever browser you're using might have a different process. Okay. But as you can see, mine opened up in an Adobe attachment. So I'm going to maximize the size so I can see the whole form. And this is the Adobe version of the form. And again, it's all fillable. So in my opinion, this is easier to use than the Excel version, but you have the option of using either one. Now, the first thing you want to do, so we're going to give an example today of just like a basic, let's say a 2-day overnight using set rates, approved per diem rates for a state employee. So 2 nights and then a return day. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's begin filling out the form. So I'll increase the size of the screen so you can see it a little bit better here. And if we go kind of from top down, we'll talk about each field. Page numbers, the first box you fill out. Most travels only need 1 page because everything can be fit on a single page for a 2-day trip. If you happen to have a multi-day trip that needs more than 1 page, you would change the page number to 2 on the second page, carry over the totals from the blue columns to the second page at the top, and then work your way down to finish that second form. And then a 3rd page if you need, and so on. Business unit, type in your 5-digit business unit number, your agency's share business unit number. If you don't know it, you can obtain that from your CFO or your supervisors. This one is going to be for the Department of Finance and Administration. So it's business unit 34100. We want all 5 digits. So 34100. The voucher number field, you, the traveler, if you're entering your own form or if someone's helping you enter your form, you won't know this. And the voucher number box is left blank until the agency inputs this into Share, which is our ERP system, because that's where the voucher number is generated. So the traveler, the people filling out the form, you won't enter that. Okay, you'll leave that one blank. That's about the only thing you'll leave blank on the form. Then moving over, agency name, type out the full agency name. And don't use acronyms. You'll see the form will auto size, so it'll get smaller if your agency has a longer name. Okay. Supplier name, this is really important. I'm going to use myself as an example. You, the traveler, the person helping the traveler fill out the form, you need to know your supplier ID, which is your vendor ID number assigned to you when you submitted a W-9 within the Share system. So today's not a Share class, but I do want to go into Share really fast and show you how to obtain that if you don't know your supplier ID. And it's really important to know it and to make sure it's right, so the right people get paid and it goes to the right bank account or the check is issued to the right person. So we're going to go into Share. You can see I'm using a testing environment, but it's an exact copy of the production. Okay, so log into Share. And if you're the traveler, you may not have access to do this. Someone at your agency may need to do it for you, but you can ask them and they can get it for you. So I'm going to log into Share. I want to go to the supplier module to look up my name to get my supplier ID. And there's a couple things to be aware of. So when you're in Share, Make it a little bit bigger here. You go to the navigator, you go to the menu, you go to suppliers, supplier information, and add an update suppliers. And there's two options: add update supplier, review suppliers. Depends on your security access level. You all may not have this access. Someone at your agency may need to do it for you. But I would go to review suppliers. And there's a couple things you can search by someone's name, address. I'm gonna type in my last name here, and I'm gonna search for it. And you can see there are two different people with that same last name. One's my wife, one is myself. We both work at DFA. If you scroll over, you'll see that the first one's inactive, meaning it can't be used. And then the second one is approved, which means it can be used. In this case, we're going for the second one because it's mine. But this is where you want to be really careful as an agency. Make sure you select the right one. If you run across a supplier that is inactive, that means we need to update a W-9 in the system. You should also make sure the addresses are all correct, because the address should be linked to your agency that they work for. If it's wrong, you need to have them submit a new W-9 and get it updated for your agency, given maybe they transferred from another agency or something like that. Another thing that you can do is search by the employee ID, the payroll ID, right? The ID that's assigned to every state employee based on their payroll in the system, because that's how we set up state employees. Now, for board members, commissioners, public officers, they're not set up that way. If they're not a state employee, you would need to search by their name or their social security tax ID number in the system. But in this example, I'm going to search by my employee ID just to make sure I'm using the right supplier and I pay the right person. So you can do that by changing the ID type to employee ID. In the box on the right-hand side here, type in the employee ID, which my employee ID is 337420, and search. And give it a minute to search. The testing environment sometimes is a little bit slower than what you do in production, so you can see the computer spinning and thinking. But there you go. Now it found the right one, which was the same one we saw earlier, but now it's verified by my employee ID, which is always unique per employee and social security number, never duplicated. So that's a good way to verify. Make sure if you were the traveler, know what your employee ID is, share that with your agency. They can all search and make sure they use the right supplier. So I'm going to make a note of this. Actually, I'm going to copy it so I can use it on the form, but write it down, keep it, your supplier ID will always stay the same. Even if you transfer between agencies, your supplier ID will always stay the same. Okay. All right. So that's all we're going to do and share. The rest of the quick how-to video will show you how to fill out the rest of the form. So supplier ID, we want all 10 digits. So I copied it from share and I pasted it. Now, this is one area where if you're using the Microsoft Excel version, you need to be aware of something. Microsoft Excel many times, depending on how it's customized within your computer and your network, may drop off those leading zeros in Excel, and we need all 10. So when you're in Microsoft Excel, if you just type an apostrophe, and I can't do it here because it doesn't allow me to in PDF, but if you type an apostrophe before the 10 digits, it won't drop those zeros off. And that really goes for anything that you do in Microsoft Excel that starts with zeros. If you type an apostrophe, then the zeros on the number, it'll keep them there. So if you're using the Excel form, make sure you type an apostrophe and the zeros if you notice that they're dropping off, because we do need that. And the same thing goes for the voucher number. When the person enters the voucher number, they'll have to do the same thing. Okay, now moving on. The trip that we are filling out the form today is for a 2-day overnight trip from Rio Rancho to the Las Cruces and back. And it's my residence is in Rio Rancho, so we'll get to that in a minute. But I will be driving a state vehicle. So I'm going to enter the state vehicle information, and I'm going to use, a fictitious license plate here because we don't need to share our state license plate numbers, but here we go. 123 GHF. It is we're going to say a 2019 Ford Ranger, and this is what we're driving. You would put the state vehicle information in. Okay. 2019 Ford Ranger. And on your vehicle type drop-down box, change that to a state vehicle. If it's a state vehicle, state vehicle. If it's a personal vehicle, personal vehicle. Since this is a state employee, we're not a board or commission member, and there's no length of meeting because we're not going to a board. So we leave these boxes as not a board member, not applicable. If you were doing board member or commissioner travel, you would need to select the appropriate drop-down option. Okay. Moving on, post of duty. My office is in Santa Fe, where I'm recording this video. And then my residence is in Rio Rancho. So the DFA, Travel 101 course that we provide every month gives you all the rules and regulations, but we should all be aware that in order to qualify for travel reimbursement, you have to travel somewhere outside of a 35-mile radius of both your postal duty and residence. In this case, we're going to Las Cruces, so it's plenty outside of that 35-mile radius, so we qualify. This is going to be 100% travel, meaning all travel expenses requested at the same time. It's not prepaid travel. It's not a recoup. It's not mileage only. It's just 100% travel, and it'll be the final voucher. One and done type situation. So you click the final voucher box. If you were doing prepaid travel, advanced 80% travel, you would click that box. But for today, we're just doing a regular 100% travel. Okay. All right. So moving on to kind of the heart and the meat of the form. In this middle section, you have to explain, and if you read the form, it tells you what you need to do, but it's really important to understand why. Nature of expense, interdestination, and nature of official business. In essence, you have to tell your agency and DFA where you went, why you went there, how it's business related, because in order to qualify for travel, you have to be outside the 35-mile radius. It has to be business related for business purposes, not personal. And it has to be approved in advance by your agency. All travel has to be approved in advance by your agency. So this section of the form kind of gives you the opportunity to put as much of that information in as you can. So we are traveling to Las Cruces, New Mexico. And you don't want to use acronyms on here. States are okay, but abbreviations, acronyms, we don't want to see on the form. You can do a state. That's okay. Obviously, we all know what NM is for New Mexico, but other than that, you want to fill this out. So traveling to Las Cruces, New Mexico, departed from Rio Rancho. And you'll see as you type in, it will auto size, but it gets to the point where things can get so small that it's hard to read. So I always just kind of go down to the next column, the next row when it looks like it's starting to get too small. But I'm put teaching a travel class in Las Cruces for state employees. So that's the nature. So now, I have told you where I'm going, where I left from, and why I'm going there. And my postal duty and residence because it's on the top of the form. So now we have all those qualifiers. It's outside 35 miles. It's business related. My agency is going to approve this form once it gets input into the system. All of those qualifiers are there. Your agency may have a pre-approval process that you have to go through before you travel and before you fill out the form. That's an agency policy, and I would defer you to them. But the state form and the state policy, this is what we're looking for. And then you go on and explain to us what you're requesting a reimbursement for. And if you read the form, it says date, itemized cost by day. You have to request your reimbursements at the lowest level, meaning type by day. In this case, it's pretty basic. It's an overnight per diem, 2 nights, and a return. And that's all we have. So the first line here, and we're going to say we left, I forget the date. Let me find the right date. So February 21st at 8 a.m. Okay, so 2/21, what is this year? 23, 8 a.m. on the dot. Okay. And we're going to come back on the 23rd. So that's our 2-night trip. But let's go with our itemized cost by day. So 2/21/23, 8 a.m. So we have 1 night of per diem. And I'd actually move this down here just to keep it a little bit cleaner. So per diem, night 1. And for fiscal year 23, which is where we're at now, you have to check the DFA website for the rates. But for fiscal year 23 until June 30th, the overnight per diem rate is $155 per day. So 155 in the blue column. That's all you have to do is type in the 155. Everything else will calculate for you up and down. You should only be filling out things in the blue columns, unless you're doing mileage where you have to put the number of miles here and do the calculation yourself. Okay. 155. And that's all I have. So then I have per diem night 2. Same rate, 155. Now I'm gonna move my dates just so everything's kind of in order. And I just kind of like to do this as I'm filling out my my travel forms and I start seeing things maybe not looking as clean and easy to read as I like, I'll just kind of clean them up. Okay. And then here we're going to put the date. There's no departure or arrival time that second day because we're still on travel. So you don't need dates and times there. And then on our final day, which is the 23rd, we got back at, if I recall correctly, it was 2 p.m. So what you have now is your return from travel per diem. And we have to calculate that. So return from travel is based on the number of hours you were gone on the final day, the final period after your overnights, and there was 2. So we left at 8 a.m. on the 21st. We got back at 2 p.m. on the 23rd. So we're going to calculate the return from travel number of hours from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the 23rd. How many hours was I gone on that final day? And I'll just count this with my fingers to make it easier instead of using a formula, a calculator, all that stuff. So I'm going to say 8 to 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2. So it's 6 hours. So on that final day, I was gone for 6 hours. So I'm going to put 6 hours on my travel form. And if I go look at the return from travel scale, which is published on the DFA website, I will see that 6 hours is in the second bucket. There are 3 buckets. You have the 2 to 6, 2 to less than 6. You have the 6 to less than 12, and then you have the 12 to less than 24. So this is in that second bucket, which is the 6 to 12, because it's exactly 6 hours. So it's 6 hours or more up to 12. And that's $42 right now in fiscal year 23. And you can see everything is going in my per diem column because this is all per diem. And it will be all charged to the meals and lodging per diem account code and share, and it's in-state travel. Okay. We don't have any mileage because we drove a state vehicle. Obviously, you can't be reimbursed for mileage driving a state vehicle. And we don't have any other costs. There was nothing else that we expended. Okay. So that's really it on our 2-day overnight trip. We have our 2 per diems. We have our return from travel, and everything calculates properly. And you can see it calculates across and down for you. So the total reimbursement for this trip, as you can see here, is $352. Okay. And then just kind of moving forward to the rest of the bottom, before I get there, real fast, if something strange happens when you're on travel, maybe there's a missing day, maybe something came up because you got sick or you were on annual leave, like make a note of it on the form. And we tell this to all state employees, anytime something strange happens that might look out of place or awkward on a travel form, add a note or attach a memo explaining what happened. Sometimes there's not enough room on the form to give us the whole scenario, but this is your opportunity to explain anything that might look weird and get denied and sent back to the agency. So just put it on your form. In this case, it's pretty simple. We don't need to do that. But going on the bottom, your per diem based on, it's asking you what's your per diem based on. These are approved rates. So we're going to check the approved rate box. The bottom, which is your non-routine assignment, we're going to check the box because this is non-routine travel. This isn't travel that extends more than 30 days. I wasn't reassigned, anything like that. So the majority of all travels will have that box checked. If the box isn't checked, there's a problem, and you'll have to discuss that with DFA. Okay. We don't need over 215 lodging. This isn't over 215. This really only comes into play when you're doing actual reimbursements and your lodging is over 215. We don't have that in this example, so we won't need to have that signed. The traveler that's filling out this form needs to sign and date the form, and it can be signed electronically, wet signature. Obviously, we recommend everything to be done electronic these days, so I'm going to sign it with my built-in electronic signature that I have previously set up. You could use Adobe signature. You can use you can sign it by hand. The signature box lets you sign it by hand if you want to. We accept it all as long as it's signed by the traveler. And then the date, we'll just use today's date because it's within the 2-week window. Those of you that are familiar, and that's not today's date. With the state process, you have to submit your travel reimbursements to DFA within 2 weeks of return. So we're signing and filling out the form on March 1st. And travel ended on the 23rd. So we're well within that window as long as this gets submitted and shared within the next few days. Okay, sign a date. And then go back and double check that everything is correct. Make sure your name is right. Make sure your supplier ID is right. Make sure it's all filled out properly, because if it's not, it'll get denied. And make sure your rates are right. And before we leave today, I'll go to the DFA website and show you where the rates are, just in case you're not familiar with that. Form looks good. I don't see any mistakes. So now I'm going to save this on my computer wherever, and you can, if you're doing it on your phone, your tablet, just save it. I'm going to save it on my desktop, and I'm going to name it Mark's Travel. This way I don't forget what it's for, and I'm going to put 2.21.2023. So I'm just kind of giving it a name so I know what the file is. I'm going to save that on my desktop. Now the file's on my desktop, and depending on how your agency works, you would then email that to the person responsible for the travel at your agency. Every agency is different, so I don't know what that is. They will take that electronic file, they will audit it, they will upload it into our ERP system, and they do the payment voucher to get you paid. There may be other internal documents you have to attach, pre-approvals, anything your agency requires. If this was an actual reimbursement, meaning actual costs were being reimbursed, you'd have to attach all your receipts and other supporting documentation is required. For per diem, it's regardless of expenditure, so you don't have other supporting documentation as long as this was all approved by your agency. Okay, so there you go. That's how you fill out the ISTE using the PDF version. And just remember, if you're using the Excel version, make sure you use that apostrophe before the supplier ID, before the voucher number, anywhere else where you might have leading zeros, so they don't drop off, because we do need to see all of those to confirm that it's accurate and shared. Okay, and then one last thing before we leave today, if you go back to the DFA website from the homepage, and remember the domain name is nmdfa.state.nm.us. On our website, if you go to financial control, resource information, and then memos and notices. Once you get to this page, if you scroll down to the accounting policies and procedures section, you will see the mileage travel rates and the per diem travel rates. And for now, we're using FY23 because that's the year we're in. So you'll open that file, and then this attachment will download. And those are the travel rates for the last 3 years. So these are the per diem rates that you would use to fill out your forms. And if you're traveling on actuals, it has the meal rate on there as well. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you learned how to fill out an ISTE. We will post more videos on how to do an actual, maybe how to do prepaid travel and things like that in the future. Thank you.